So I was watching this Bob Dylan documentary. Is Martin Scorsese put out a
Oh
documentary
yeah.
on Netflix a few years ago about Bob Dylan, specifically about a tour he did in the '70s called the Rolling Thunder Review. I'm a fan of Bob. I'm a big Bob fan.
You're a Bob guy.
I'm here in Minnesota, his home state, Minneapolis right now. Chad Gable is also a big Bob Dylan fan. We talk about
Oh,
him all
I
the
didn't
time.
know that.
Huge. That's one of our big, you know, what do you want to call it?
Your camaraderie.
Connection
Yeah.
points. Yeah. But so I was watching this, and a couple of things jumped out at me about this that I thought were fascinating. And one was at the very beginning. I'm going to paraphrase all this because I don't remember any of it, but I don't remember the specifics. But, I think Scorsese or whoever's directing asks him, what do you remember about the Rolling Thunder Review? Because it was really an interesting thing. He got all these musicians and all these poets, and he played really small venues. It was a really, really interesting tour, enough to warrant a documentary, apparently. So what do you remember about the Rolling Thunder Review? And he starts to answer with this like Bob style, sort of philosophical, weird, this wishy-washy sort of answer that you would expect out of a Bob Dylan, a poet type person. And then he cuts himself off. He's like, I'm just saying this nonsense. I don't even remember it. Something along these lines where he starts by giving what my little breakdown of it is he starts by kind of giving the answer that he thinks he should be giving. And then he cuts himself off. And it's like, you know what? It was just another tour. I don't even remember. I've been on tour nonstop for 40 years. He's not going to remember everything, It might seem iconic to us, but it might just be a drop in the bucket for Bob, who's been on the quote unquote never ending tour. That's what he's known for. He's been on tour forever.
Yeah.
And he kind of doesn't remember it. So I thought that was real interesting in the idea of that's also kind of Bob-ish, is that antagonistic quality to him, which I find interesting. And the reason I'm bringing up Bob Dylan also in this documentary is he gets asked about something about like the meaning of life or something, or I'm butchering this. I should have watched it.
I'm going to start hitting people. I'm going to start hitting people with that in this show. What's the meaning of life? I'm going to get more philosophical.
Like just something about what's it all about? And he's like, or about finding yourself or something like that. And he has this answer that I found really interesting where he says, life isn't about finding anything. It's about creating. It's about creating yourself and creating things. And I thought that was real interesting because it started bringing up the idea to me about like the authentic self. And Bob in particular is a real interesting fella in his evolution of his career. If you look into it, he gets a lot of notoriety in the folk scene in New York. And then he becomes like this voice of the generation with his protest music. And he has this antagonistic sort of quality to him. So he's like, hey, no, that's not me. And he starts doing something completely different. And then in the late 60s, all of a sudden he's putting on a cowboy hat and doing like Nashville blues.
Yeah.
And then he's a born again Christian. So he's just doing all this sort of stuff. And then I was also reading this magazine, which coincidentally enough,
see, there we go. See, you're prepared.
Well, no, but this is a total coincidence. I wasn't prepared, but I happened to have with me.
Handsome man, that Bob Dylan.
Yeah, sure.
Also, Jacob Dylan, very handsome.
Yeah, great singer too. Anyway, I was reading some interviews with people who knew him early on, and they're talking about how, he would take things and then he would just make them a part of him. And
like chameleon-like.
Really, very chameleon-like. Well, even his name is not Bob Dylan. It's Robert Zimmerman. Dylan Thomas is a Welsh poet, and Bob took his name. And then he loved Woody Guthrie, and he just kind of like that was a big part of him early on. He got to New York, and he had all these like they're lies if you really think about it. He just lied about his background, and nobody knew where he was from, and he'd say all these things. And it's just very fascinating to me. Like and one person says he would take. I've never seen anybody take things and make them his own the way Bob Dylan did. And that got me really thinking as it pertains to wrestling. Okay. So all that rant about Bob is just to pertain it back to wrestling, because as a hardened critic now of wrestling, because I've been in it so long, it takes a lot to sort of impress me. I think what really stands out, or what fans really gravitate towards, is the idea of authenticity.
Yes.
Right. So like, if somebody plays their character well enough to where there's believability, all of it, the very nature of wrestling revolves around believability, because we all know it's a show, but we want you to trick us.
You want to believe. That's the
you want to believe.
Yeah.
Big word there, believe. And so I think that's why authenticity is so important in wrestling, because first of all, the work has to be authentic enough to make us forget or to make us believe. But then the characters, you know, we have this innate quality. Maybe it's just me because I'm like snooty and I've been in wrestling so long. You call that wrestling? I don't know what. maybe that's me now. I don't know. But if there's something that I don't find believable in the way somebody's carrying themselves, I'm out.
And that's just in general, not even in wrestling.
Right. So what is it about us, not just as wrestling fans, but about people that need this sort of authenticity, or that, you know what I'm saying, that gravitate towards this authenticity?
I think a lot of it is attraction to confidence, and it takes a lot of confidence to be that authentic person. It totally.
Commitment and belief. Belief is the big word, because I think we don't know what to believe. And especially you're talking about the world we live in now with the internet and misinformation and all these different news sites and all this thing where it's so hard to know what to believe.
Yeah.
I think we have great admiration for people that we think believe. Because like, wow, that guy believes something. Because I don't know what to believe, but that guy, he knows. So you're magnetized. You're drawn to that, you know?
There is like that like charisma that's attached to someone that just seems like they don't need to be seeking out what's right or what's wrong. They've already made their decision, and they're like forging their own path, not having to worry about what everyone else is doing. Because that's all I think most of us want at the end of the day, is to have the confidence to just be our authentic selves. But a lot of us are constantly trying to change to please people.
But here's my counterpoint to that, which is that's part A, and I'm in on a lot of that, right?
Okay.
But here's the Sami split, which is
the old Sami split,
which has ruled over my entire life, is the two sides to both things, and I see the merit of that. But then again, nature, nurture, I don't know. The flip side of that, another kind of paraphrase quote here that I kind of remember in Bret Hart's book, the very beginning of the book. He has a quote in there, again, I'm going to butcher it, but it's something along the lines of, life, as you get older, you find life is less about what you learn and more about what you've known all along. Okay.
Interesting. Okay.
So that lends itself to the idea that there is this sort of authentic self. Whereas the Bob Dylan example that I'm kind of talking about leads me to kind of think that there is no authentic self. You're just this sort of amalgamation and cocktail of all these, because that's what I think I skew more to that. I don't think there's just you. What are you? What are you? You're not you. You're just this mix of things that have been filled in your head and the product of your environment and all these things, and they shape you. I'm kind of the opinion that maybe there is no authentic self. You know?
Yeah, I get that.
I think it's a little bit of both, the nature nurture conversation. Like, obviously, I think you are born, with, let's say, predispositions or whatever. But ultimately, it's like a bunch of light switches, and even genetics we now know work like this. You're not genetically doomed to have, let's say, breast cancer or something, but you could have a genetic predisposition, and external forces of your environment can turn those light switches on and turn those genetics on. You see what I'm saying? So I think, like everything, I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's a little bit of both. But ultimately, I think that there is no real authentic self when it comes to, like, certainly when you talk about wrestling, because wrestling is all just marketing yourself to kind of get over and all this stuff. but you have to do it in a way that makes people think that what they're seeing is the real you. But there is no real you. Is there? I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think in those moments that there are, I think that's like a moment by moment kind of thing. And I mean, I don't know how deep into this rabbit hole we want to go, but I think Roman Reigns is a great example of that. I feel like looking at the stuff that he's doing now and how authentic he is, it's connecting with people far more than it was prior.
Okay, but like when I say authentic, I don't mean he authentically it's one thing to believe what you're saying, but I'm getting at who you really are before you even become a wrestler. Okay. You know what I'm saying? I'm getting at like, how is that stuff shaped and formed? It's not authentic in that it's like created in your soul. It's stuff that's been added to you. Like you're this bucket and different people have dropped different drops in there. And then, yeah, the end product is this person. And the better you're able to show this side of yourself, but I'm talking about the things behind that, the things that influence that. I don't think those are necessarily authentic in the sense that they originate from within. I'm saying they originate from without. They come from the outside world and your experiences and things like that, and they shape you.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm getting
I agree with. Yeah, I
like Roman can act the way he acts because he genuinely is a top guy, and now he's handling himself like the top guy. But he was also put in the position to be a top guy.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like this circle. It's this circle that begets itself. You see what I'm saying?
Yes. Yeah.
But I'm saying
took me
like
a second to arrive upon. I was like, wait, hold on.
Yeah, I'm maybe not articulating it in the right way. When I'm saying authentic self, I'm not talking about that you believe authentically in what you're doing at any given time. I'm saying if you say, hey, where did that come from?
We're talking about the core bones of somebody, of what they're born with versus the things that
just where did they come from?
Them. Yeah.
Where did you get this attitude? Who taught you this attitude? And all of a sudden you realize it's not mine. It's borrowed. Somebody gave it to me. Or, oh, wait, I stole this. I heard it in a song lyric one time and I thought, wow, that sounds cool. I want to embody that. So then you become that. You become Bob Dylan, right? Like you just think you think Woody Guthrie's so cool that you make up this story about riding the rails all the way to New York City. And you might believe it and you might fool other people, but ultimately you just took something cool and said like, hey, I'll make that a part. That's me now.
Yeah.
That's me now. What is that? What is that? Think about that. That's me now. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, you're trying on a different hat and calling it a day and moving on.